Welcome, everybody, to the Chofetz Chaim Said What? And we are back, starting with our Q&A. And that question is, my husband wants to know who's crying. A friend of mine is going through significant challenges and calls me often to unload. I've asked a Rav if hearing her out is okay, and I was told I can listen and empathize as long as I don't judge the people she talks about. Okay, a few problems there, but we could talk about that after. Welcome, Hannah. And the question is, recently she was crying to me on the phone and my husband passed by. He must have overheard something because he asked me, "Is that your friend Sarah crying?" May I answer, "Yes, it's Sarah. She's not doing so well." And there's no follow-up. I think that's the only option that she was thinking about is, yeah, she's not doing so well. So first of all, are there any potential problems with her listening, or even just answering her husband? It is her husband, right? Would that make it better or not so much?
No, because you don't have to share everything, or you're not supposed to share everything. It depends, But in this situation, I wouldn't think she should say something.
That's a great point. People think, it's my husband, it's my wife, we share everything with each other, but that's not necessarily okay, right? We know that we're allowed to talk about things. First of all, people are allowed to vent to one person, pick one specific person, only if that venting is going to lead to a resolution. All right. Welcome, Chakram. And we are continuing technical difficulties have not stopped us, and neither has my inability to speak. But we are back on my iPad. I'm recording on my computer, and hopefully, B'ezras Hashem, this will go on YouTube. Okay, we're in the middle of a question, and
you can't speak HaLashon Hara.
Right? Because see, I'm just trying to teach you a lesson by not being able to speak. How important speech is, If you don't speak correctly, you can't get the point across. Okay. So, is it? We are back. And, okay, the question was, I'm going to go back to the question. My husband wants to know who's crying. A friend of mine is going through significant challenges and calls me often to unload. I've asked a Rav if hearing her out is okay, and I was told that I can listen and empathize as long as I don't judge the people she talks about. All right? Which she spoke to a Rav about it, but what are potential challenges? That's the first question. Think about that and then hear the second question that she asks. Recently, she was crying to me on the phone, and my husband passed by. He must have overheard something because he asked me, "Is that your friend Sarah crying?" May I answer, "Yes, it's Sarah. She's not doing so well." And as I pointed out, she just said, "Is she allowed to say that? Yes or no?" I guess that's the answer, yes or no. What could she be allowed to say? And then also think back to my initial question, which was what challenges could come up if she's hearing this friend out, even though, besides the fact that she spoke to a Rav, let's say she didn't, what challenges could arise? So, three different questions going on there.
Well, one of the challenges is that it is hard when you're listening to somebody, even though you're just the one person that they're venting to or whatever, you do have to try to let that completely go after you hear it. Sometimes that's a challenge. You don't want to judge the people, because she might have her problems with that person, but you might not.
Right.
And
exactly.
Your husband, you're really not supposed to, unless the person says you can, but you really shouldn't. You just say, "Yeah, I was just helping someone out, who just needed my help."
Right. Ma, that's a great point. Exactly. The reason why we have a prohibition against listening to HaLashon Hara and not just speaking it is because when we are told information, we may just say, "Oh, yeah, I'll forget about it." But a lot of times the information that we're told actually sinks in, and we do consider it, even though we know we shouldn't. It doesn't necessarily mean it's just gonna leave our minds. All right, it's not gonna be like, oh wow, they hear that Ploni Almoni went and stole some things at the grocery store, and this person who's speaking said that they saw it, right? It doesn't matter. We're not supposed to believe that information, but we might end up looking at Ploni Almoni saying, wow, he might be the type of person to do that. Maybe, even if we know it's probably not true, even if we know, but he was told, okay, you're not supposed to judge the people that she talks about, okay? I, myself, think that it's difficult. It's not completely impossible, but she did speak to a Rav, which means that it seems that this woman who's going through some challenges, Sarah, needs someone to vent to. And we have spoken about venting before, and my mom pointed out that it just because, like, can you tell your husband something? No, you can't tell your husband everything, right, Dad? I feel like in the middle of this you just interject and go, you could tell your husband everything. But the thing is that there's certain information that you're not supposed to tell. You were supposed to be able to get things off your chest, and I don't know if it cut me off at this point when I was giving the class, but you should be able to come to a resolution and be able to fix something by speaking, by venting. It shouldn't just be constant venting every single day, and you're like, hey, they're only venting to me, I'm that one person that they vent to, but it's constant venting. So yeah, those are a few things. Is she allowed to say, yes, it's Sarah, she's not doing so well? My mom says, nah, it's not his business, right, Ma? Does anyone else have any other points that they like to make? Do they think it is okay? Main point to think about is toeles, which, circa, what is toeles?
Constructive purpose.
Wonderful, constructive purpose, right. So since we have to see, like, is there constructive purpose in this area? Does anyone see how there could be, or that there isn't at all?
I don't think it is, because he's just walking by and he hears something, but he's just walking by. There's no constructive purpose for it.
So Mom said there's no constructive purpose. It's her husband. Does he need to know about her friend?
Yes,
Probably
yes,
not.
Everything.
Yes, everything. Right?
You know nothing and like it.
So also another point to be made is, okay, let's say her husband is a therapist. Would that make it, would that change the circumstance at all? Would there be a toeles?
I don't think so, unless it's something that she thinks maybe her husband can help. Maybe she should suggest, is it okay if I speak to my husband? Maybe he can help with this resolution.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And also you could say, maybe you'd like to have a session with him because I know he cares about you and he would like to help you and he is a professional. That might change. Otherwise, even just telling her husband is Lashon Hara in itself, right? And maybe he doesn't know the challenges that her friend is going through, and it might change the way that he sees the friend in his own eyes, because it might be a friend that comes over often and seems pretty chill, and then if someone, let's say, brings up a shidduch idea, then he's like, yeah, she seems really nice, and then Lashon Hara can lead to more Lashon Hara. But yeah, just as it's straight out, I would say I agree with you. There's no toeles, and it doesn't seem that anyone else believes that there is a toeles in this situation. So let us read the answer. No, since saying yes, it is Sarah, may be Lashon Hara, it would be better to say it's one of my friends who is having a hard time, right? And that way, we're leaving it open. He might say, "Wait, is it this friend?" It might continue to say, "It's just one of my friends, and we're working through it," right? If this is, I think, in my personal opinion, even though I know she spoke to Rav, which obviously listen to that Rav, and I'm not a rabbi, right? We always say ask your local Rav. I would say, see how long this goes on for. If this is, she says, calls me often to unload, I think that there should be boundaries. in terms of that relationship, because if it's a constant thing, then she might actually start to believe it. It might also weigh her down, because, we all are very strong, but sometimes it could take a lot of someone just complaining and complaining and complaining and complaining and complaining, and then it gets you down. So I would say that's just my opinion. It has nothing to do with the answer. Just she should give her friends some boundaries in terms of venting. All right, let us get into it. So, last class we spoke about Tisha B'Av, and the class before that, I spoke a little bit about this movie, 1,000 Words. Does anyone remember that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So, great movie. Would recommend in terms of the class. 10 out of 10. Actually, I don't know. I don't think it was a 10 out of 10. It was good though. So we're back into it, and it says everything said above. Okay, everything said above. This is talking about previously in Principle 5. We're continuing on in Principle 5. And previously we spoke about demeaning someone and demeaning someone before a city, demeaning a posek who's a teacher of law in Israel, right? So mostly that. Everything said above applies even if he just said that the subject is not wise in worldly matters specifically, right? We're not saying they're not wise in terms of, academia or through experience. We're just saying, just they're not wise in worldly matters, especially if he is seen as a wise person in Torah, like how I previously mentioned a posek, and it is said that he is less wise and people will think less of him. This is Lashon Hara, since the intent is to lower the way his friends see the subject. Not for the subject's benefit, right? The subject is the person that we're speaking about. Could be a posek, it could just be random dude, right? This can cause him harm or distress, as we mentioned before. So we said, how do we know if it's going to cause somebody harm? We never know if it's going to cause someone harm. It could be monetary, God forbid. It could be physical harm. But any of those things, it could cause the person harm, and we need to be careful with what we say, and not just who we say it to, just with what we say to everybody that we say it to. And these are sort of subsections in that area. Someone speaks of the city rabbi to the city, saying that he's not wise in Torah, God forbid, but that he knows a little about halachic rulings that are needed in practice. Even if it is true, it is absolute lashon hara. This lowers his honor and undermines his livelihood, therefore dishonors Torah and mitzvahs. So we're saying, like, there's a rabbi that people look up to and they ask questions about, and then you say, yeah, I mean, and maybe you've asked him some halachic questions, then you looked it up in the Shulchan Aruch, right? And then you said, he's a great guy, but in terms of Torah, he isn't so wise, but he does really nice in certain halachic rulings. Then I would say that then they are saying, that's lashon hara. It doesn't matter whether or not it's true. People look up to him, and that is his livelihood. He is a rabbi. People look up to him. That is his job. And it doesn't just say it dishonors him. This actually says dishonors the Torah and mitzvos, right? This also applies even if he spoke about someone who recently got married in the city, since he'll be seen as lower in his in-laws' eyes and the members of his household. There is no greater pain. So his family members will also see him lower in their eyes, right? And that is a terrible thing. Everyone wants to know. Everyone wants to look up to their father. Thank you, Dad. Everyone wants to look up to their mother. Thank you, Mom. And even their siblings. Love you, Shmiros. And their friends. You guys are awesome. So no one wants to be demeaned in their friends' eyes and their family's eyes. It's a terrible, terrible thing. Imagine, like, God forbid, someone starting to speak about you, or someone starting to speak about someone in front of a whole city, and their whole family is is uncomfortable, and they lose out on their relationship and their respect, and the father's trying to guide his children through life and to teach them about Torah and mitzvahs, and they're like, why should we even listen to you? We were told that this and this and this about you. You're not even that wise in Torah, right? So, if someone said about a worker that they are not a good worker, this is Lashon Hara. If the intent is not to demean, but to derive benefit, then it says that this will be discussed in Principle 9. So, we will find out in a few principles. So, this is an interesting point to be made, is that we're talking, this section said to not to demean, but to derive benefit, because we've been speaking about demeaning. Then that's why it's just, it's bringing that up, which we're going to be discussing in Principle 9, which I haven't gone to yet in terms of my research or anything, so that'll be interesting. And it's saying to say about a worker that they are not a good worker. Like, that is their whole job. That is their entire job. It's like if I'm trying to promote my class and I'm trying to, to do this, and if HaLashon, someone said about me, yeah, she's not even good at teaching that class, who will even show up to my class anymore, especially if I'm trying to teach, and doesn't matter whether or not I'm good at teaching the class, right? It's part of what I do. Then that's a terrible thing. So that's a point. Continuing demeaning someone, it says, in respect to strength, speaking about him before the city, saying that he's a weak man, he can be harmed by this. If he has a day laborer or teacher, if he is a day laborer or a teacher, it is very likely, especially at this time. Oh, so I'm saying, like, so it spoke about this in Sefer Chofetz Chaim, right? At that time, it's very likely that they're a laborer. It's not like they had robots doing a lot of the manual labor. Back then, they had humans doing the manual labor. And if you say, oh, that person's weak, they probably won't even get a job, because a lot of these jobs are heavy lifting jobs and they won't be able to get it. Then this is certainly Lashon Hara. Saying that someone is poor or not wealthy, if it becomes public knowledge, he will not find anyone to extend him credit, which threatens his livelihood. A man of heart who does not intend to receive benefit from what they say does not result in harm to the subject. He must say that he does not anticipate benefit, and that will go into detail also in Principle 9. He cannot be lenient in this manner and say, I do not intend to demean this man, but to derive such and such benefit. So this is also going into demeaning versus benefit, and I guess I'll be discussed later. They're bringing a lot of different points, but I think since it has to do with demeaning somebody, then they're bringing it up now. So, then I have, for my last class, a few Q&As. Ooh, scroll. Okay. Oh my gosh, one of my classes. Okay. It depends on the man being spoken of, the subject. It is possible for someone to say the same thing about two people, and one can be praising the person and speaking Lashon Hara about the other person. Does anyone know where I'm going with this? You're talking about two people and say the same exact thing, but one of them is Lashon Hara and the other one is praising the person. So, one of them is if we're talking about someone who's learned, right? So here it's saying, if he speaks about someone whose sustenance is provided by others and has no problem with livelihood, and he learns Torah 3 or 4 hours a day, he would be demeaning him. So if we're saying, they get help from their family in terms of their livelihood, and this is a guy who learns Torah a few hours a day, then it's demeaning, because it's like, hey, he has the entire day and he doesn't have a job, he doesn't work, right? That's Lashon Hara about this person. But if he said the same thing about someone who works and toils for a living, or even, like, let's say someone's in Kollel and works the entire day, and they're being supported by their parents, it might be the first few years of marriage or something, then that's a really great thing. And say, wow, they're starting off their marriage learning Torah. He's hopefully going to start working soon, or even if he plans on learning for a while, but he's being provided for by his family to help him because Torah is important, and that's every day, all day, then that's a compliment to this person. It could also be said about positive commandments, like honoring Shabbos. If it talks about someone who's poor, who spends a substantial sum for him to honor the holy Shabbos, this is praise. But if the same thing is said for a wealthy townsperson, it could be demeaning for him, and he would be scorned since the sum would be considered little for him. So it's saying this person is spending a lot on Shabbos, or this person spends this amount of money, this set amount, right? We're talking about both people, and we're saying, okay, they spend this amount of money on Shabbos, and we know that's a person who, thank God, they're well-to-do in terms of, they have their necessities, but they don't really have so much money. It's like, wow, they're spending that much on Shabbos when they don't have a lot. So they're really putting so much honor into honoring Shabbos, right? Like covered Shabbos. And saying, okay, but this person, and you're also saying about this person, but this person is super wealthy. They only spend that much on Shabbos when they have all these things. Like, they clearly don't even care about Shabbos or honoring Shabbos in any way. And that would be Lashon Hara. So I'm going to end off here. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but it's out of my hand. Thank you, Hashem, for letting it all work out. Does anyone have any questions, by the way? I realize I stopped asking if anyone has questions or comments, concerns.
Great time.
Thank you. Yes, wonderful. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your evening. And B'ezrat Hashem, please God, I will see you next week.
Amen.
Bye.